Guys, there's so many sports. I am overwhelmed with sports, and I think you're about to be too, because we're about to talk about all the sports, because there are so many sports, because they took the fall sports, they moved them to spring, and now we're going to talk about every single one. Shamrock Sports starts now.
I'm Ellen Geyer, and you're watching Shamrock Sports, and my childhood dreams coming true.
You know, Notre Dame, they won it in a year that doesn't count. This doesn't matter at all. Join a conference.
Williams helmet off. He's out. Jafar Armstrong in. Fake to him. Setting up the screen to Armstrong. Here goes the senior from Missouri. Room to run inside the 10. Inside the 5. To the right. Ray lined up in the backfield. Same motion, same setup. This time it's the boot. Bryce in trouble, and he is brought down by Foskey. Now they will go. Yep, bouncing outside. It is Kyron Williams. He will go the distance. Notre Dame touchdown, Kyron Williams.
Welcome inside the second floor of the Duncan Student Center. Chris Frick alongside Chloe Stafford, John Bailey. Happy to have you guys here. We've got a lot to get into today. We're going to start out with women's basketball. Gosh, guys, I'm still upset about it. They got a little bit hot at the end of the season with some resurgence, had big wins over Pitt and Florida State, lost one to Louisville, one of the top teams in the country, and then a big ACC tournament loss to Clemson, which pretty much just it crushes a lot of hope. Chloe, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Clemson game was actually a super close game. It was a 68-63, and it was even closer. Clemson kind of winning in the final minutes, and I really think that Notre Dame, they played well against Clemson. I think they played very well coming up to the game, and I think they just got unlucky in the ACC tournament this year.
Yeah, John?
I really think the Irish have struggled to establish an identity this year. You know, who are this Notre Dame basketball team this year? Are they the team that beat Georgia Tech and Florida State, two of the best teams in the ACC? Or are they the team that lost to Clemson twice now and lost to Boston College, which was Boston College only their second conference win of the whole season? And I think primarily this problem comes down to not being able to close out games. You know, we talked about that Clemson game. They were in it for the first three quarters, but at the end, they only scored 9 points when it really mattered in the fourth. And I think ultimately their inability to finish strong has led to their downfall several times this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we can get into the speculation all we want, but the bottom line is I think that the season's over for them. They were projected to be coming into the ACC tournament. They were projected to be the last four in, but an exit in their first game is basically it's the crushing blow to their chances. So now we look ahead to next season. So John, what are the things you're looking forward to in terms of next year's team?
Well, I'm really impressed so far with Olivia Miles. As an early enrollee this year, she has been killing it and has obviously been their second best player so far, I think. Coach Ivy has been nothing but, head over heels for her, praising her, calling her a sponge, the way she soaks up knowledge. She's smart on offense and defense, and really, I think, is the future of this program. In the game against Clemson, she put up 10, 8, and 5. I think just her versatility in both offense and defense is going to be causing pains for the rest of the ACC for years to come.
And I was going to go off of that. I think this year was a big rebuilding year for the Irish. They have a new head coach, Niele Ivey, who I've heard amazing things about her. I think the team loves her. I think everyone loves her. But a new coach is going to take a lot to get used to, especially from Muffet to Niele. But I think Coach Ivey can definitely do something amazing, and I think she has the tools to do it. And I think in the next few years we might see a good championship run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with what both of you guys said. I mean, obviously you kind of touched upon it, Chloe. Like, Niele Ivey had such enormous shoes to fill, about the most enormous shoes in women's college basketball, and Muffet McGraw taking over for a legend. I think she's done a really good job. And yeah, I agree with what both of you said in terms of there's a lot of strong building blocks on this team. And I mean, you mentioned Olivia Miles, Maddie Westbeld, and all ACC freshman team. She led the team in both points and rebounds. Like, really impressive stuff all around from her. I think this is a team with a lot of solid young players, a lot of teams that are going to be back next year, and a really great recruiting class coming in. So, I mean, I think there's hope here. It was a disappointing end to this season, but it wasn't a season that was expected to end in a championship run as past seasons have. So I think there's a lot of good to take away. But now I want to throw it to my good friend Kieran Cantwell, who did a bit of a player spotlight on the reverse side, on the men's basketball team. So Kieran's got a player spotlight on Nikola Jogo.
Thanks, guys. With the Notre Dame men's basketball team headed to the ACC tournament this week, let's take a look at the career of Irish senior forward Nick Jogo. Jogo hails from Ontario, Canada, and he would eventually become the first Canadian player to ever start for Notre Dame. During his junior season at Salt Fleet High School, Jogo averaged 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists while leading his squad to the regional championship. Jogo came to Notre Dame as part of a stacked 2016 class that included former Notre Dame standouts TJ Gibbs and John Mooney. He redshirted his freshman year before making his Irish debut during the 2017-2018 season. Even though he watched from the bench as a younger guy on the team, Jogo recalls the Maui Invitational Championship victory over Wichita State in 2017 as the favorite moment of his Notre Dame basketball career. Known primarily as a team glue guy and an energy spark off the bench, Jogo has stepped up his game when called upon so far in his final season, averaging a career-high 4.8 points per game on a highly efficient approach, as he is shooting 54% from the field, 39% from three, and 91% from the free throw line. His best game of the year came in mid-February against Miami, when he delivered off the bench as the starting lineup was playing without much energy. Jogo finished with 18 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks in the decisive win, showcasing his ability to impact all aspects of the game. Jogo played a huge part in the win over number 11 Florida State on Saturday's regular season finale. He started the game, finishing with 11 key points in the program's first win over a ranked opponent since the aforementioned game against Wichita State back in 2017. With the ACC tournament underway, let's cheer Jogo on as he looks to cap his career at Notre Dame. With NDTV, I'm Kieran Cantwell. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks a lot, Kieran. That was incredible stuff from my good friend Kieran Cantwell. But yeah, we'll segue that into men's basketball. They've had a rough go at things, you guys, but a big win on Saturday against Florida State. I mean, any thoughts from either of you guys on that one?
Well, I'm just glad we've had a bit of a losing streak against ranked teams, if you didn't know. About 1,100 days since the last time we topped someone in the top 25. So that was definitely a cathartic win for this Irish squad. And really, I think a lot of these same problems that plagued the women's team as far as inconsistency this season, the same with the men. But we talk about Coach Ivy being her first year. That's to be a bit expected. Mike Bray's been around for a while now. He's an experienced guy. That's not really what you're expecting for a veteran like him. So I think that it's going to be an interesting conundrum to determine what his future status with the program is going to be. But I definitely think for everything he's done for the Irish over the years, he deserves a worthy send-off.
Yeah, Chloe?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some good players on the men's team, better than a lot of players we have in the past. Prentice Hub just hit 1,000 points, which is great. We have Cormac Ryan. We have a bunch of really good players. But for some reason, men's Notre Dame basketball can never really mesh too well. But I think they do have some potential. There has to be a change somewhere, though. That's my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but watching that Florida State game, I was like, it was Murphy's Law. It was like, it felt like whatever could go wrong would go wrong, but it didn't end up happening. But I was waiting for something to go wrong, and things kept working out. I was surprised. I wasn't used to it. But yeah, I mean, you guys kind of touched upon it. This team's had a rough go of it, and obviously there was some controversy last week with some fans unhappy with Mike Bray at the game, and I think a lot of the reason behind that is just because, like, Bray's done more with less in the past. You talk about he's gone to 2 Elite Eights with this team, and you look at the current junior class. I mean, that class of Prentice Hub, Robbie Carmody, Dane Goodwin, Nate Leshevsky, that was widely considered to be Bray's best all-time class in his 20 years at Notre Dame. And it's probably been his worst 3-year stretch at Notre Dame as well. So it's just a lot of disappointment there. So you can see where some of the frustration is coming from. There's a lot of talent on this team, but I mean, right now they're taking on Wake Forest in the ACC tournament. They're underway as we speak. Don't tune away though. We're way more entertaining. But I mean, I think it's dumb to ask if you guys think that there's an ACC tournament run for Notre Dame in the cards, because I don't think there is. But is there hope for next season? And if you do think there's an ACC tournament run in the cards, please let me know, and we'll get your head checked.
No. No run this year,
Okay.
but I will be optimistic for this year. I actually read a great article by Hayden Adams today that likened the quote from The Dark Knight, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's kind of the situation Mike Bray is in right now. He brought glory back to the Irish after we had a long drought. Back-to-back Elite Eights, like you mentioned, the winningest coach in history with 15 20-win seasons and 12 tourney bids. But the last 3 years, he's had 2 losing seasons out of those years. And I think a lot of that has to do with his inability to adapt to the modern style of coaching. We look at what Nate Oates is doing at Alabama. His revolutionizing the game, making the Crimson Tide the most feared they've ever been in college basketball. And that all comes down to the pace they run. Taking lots of quick shots, usually getting a shot up before there's 14 seconds left on the shot clock, and shooting lots of threes. 47% of their shots have been from deep this year, and 85% of all shots have either been three-pointers, dunks, or putbacks. And that efficiency is an analytics, best dream scenario, really, to take those type of shots. But you don't really see the Irish modernizing their style like that. It's a lot of slow grit and grind, a lot of emphasis on control and tempo to keep it slow in order to preserve their efforts on the defensive end. And that just doesn't work these days. So really, I think that Bray can adapt for next year and hopefully modernize his style a bit. There's hope, especially with 2 top 150 recruits coming in. I think they can make a splash next year. But really, I think it'll be the deciding year next year of whether Mike Bray is remembered as a hero or a villain for the Fighting Irish.
Well put, John. Chloe, what do you think?
I would say I agree exactly with everything what John said. I think Mike Bray has done great things. He has a career of 447 wins since 2000, being the head coach here at Notre Dame, and I think he's made some great runs in the NCAA tournament, some great runs in the ACC tournament, and I think it's not looking too great for them this year for the ACC tournament, but I too believe that Mike Bray can make a comeback next season, and we could see some better playing from this team.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this team that's interesting is I feel like everyone needs to be playing at their best in order for this team to really succeed. This team was at its best this season when Hub was handling the ball well and Leshevsky had an insane three-point shooting percentage. But as soon as he stopped making all his shots, that's when this team kind of fell apart. And the problem with this team, I think, right now is their lack of size. I think in terms of the last couple of years, I think last season was probably their best chance to make any sort of run just because they had Mooney inside, and I think he made a big difference for them. I think you really saw the difference this year with them missing him because they're 2 big men, both Durham and Leshevsky. They're just not as physical as Mooney was, and I think that definitely showed as when shots weren't falling, games weren't being won. And it's also, it becomes a problem as well because you don't have size and you also don't have amazing guard play. I mean, Prentice Hubb's really the only player on the team who can create his own shot. So I think next season, John, you pointing out the Alabama's analytical style of play, I think that's a great point because I think Bray's got to adjust his playing style to the team he has. And right now it feels like the old Mike Bray style of kind of grind it out, like you mentioned, it doesn't really work anymore. So yeah, I think that's all really well said. Yeah. Moving on to men's college lacrosse. Big win this weekend. They're 2 games in thus far. Big wins over both Robert Morris and Bellarmine. But obviously games that if you're number 8 overall Notre Dame, you expect to win. Chloe, what were some of your thoughts on those first 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, they're currently 2-0. What more can they ask for? But, their game against Bellarmine this past weekend was 12-6. Really, it shouldn't have gone that way. It should have been a lot different in terms of scoring. I think they should have held Bellarmine to maybe 4 or less goals, and they should have gotten more to about 15 goals. But either way, they won, which is good. But what does this mean for them down the road? Like when they play teams, say, like Duke, when they play teams like Syracuse, are they going to be able to capitalize on these goals and capitalize on these other teams and make big wins?
No, that's definitely a tough question. I think the offense is definitely a question mark going into this year, and a lot of Notre Dame's strengths are predicated around their defense, their ability to win face-offs and control possession, and then stop the opponent on the offensive end, and then use a counterattack to create some offense off of that then. I think that it's going to be certainly difficult, but I'm a big believer in Pat Cavanaugh. He has balled out this year. There's no other word to describe his play but dominant, tying the Notre Dame record for points and assists against Robert Morris. I think that's just about as hot a start as you can get this season. And really, if we're going to win, we're going to need Pat Cavanaugh to keep balling out like this.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, John, in terms of that. But I'd also think that, Cavanaugh being such a dominant force has almost been, it seems like they're relying on him a little bit too heavily, maybe. I mean, obviously, you mentioned it, and he had 2 goals and 7 assists in that game against Robert Morris, and then against Bellarmine came out, put 6 more assists on the board. So, I mean, he's a guy who's really impressive offensively, but it feels like a lot of the offense is run through him, and when they don't have transition opportunities, they're unable to really get anything going. Do you think that could maybe be a problem for them?
Oh, no, for sure. If the defense starts to key in on him, it's going to be up to the other players then to step up and take on more of a role in the offense. He's a great distributor, but if they can shut him down, someone else needs to be able to put up some points then for them. Who do you think would be a good key player in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of key players. Another thing about that is that lacrosse is a big team sport.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have just one player scoring all the goals, because the minute he's shut down by a great defenseman, the minute he's hurt, the whole team goes to ruins. So I think someone that could really step in is Quinn McCowan. He's already very good. He's already got a ton of goals and stuff, but I think there could be some good. He can definitely come out and play better than he has in the past few years. So far, he has four goals in the last game, so he looks like he's on his way. But I think it would be good for him to take some of the stress off of Pat Cavanaugh, especially since Pat is only a sophomore, so he doesn't have that much experience. So I think McCowan could definitely step up, along with some other players that maybe we haven't heard of yet, like Jake Taylor. Shout out to Jake Taylor.
Oh, he had a sweep behind the back goal in Saturday's game. That was awesome. But yeah, I think John, what are your thoughts on that in terms of players step up?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I'm not necessarily a lacrosse expert, but I think you can liken it to basketball a lot. And if people key in on your best player, it's a team game, and ultimately other people need to step up. I think that there's a lot of talent on this team from what I've read into it. I mean, you don't get to be ranked number 8 in the country without being good all around. But it is going to be interesting to see what happens when we start to play better competition. When you do start playing the Dukes of the world, the heavy hitters, and not the Robert Morrises, what really comes out then? Are you going to be able to punch back, or are you going to settle for trying to run the offense through one guy?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I have to give credit because, I mean, there's, like you mentioned, Quinn McCann, 7 goals in the first 2 games. Eric Dobson, only a true freshman. He's starting for them. He's played really well so far. Wheaton Jacobois has looked great. But, I mean, I think, yeah, there's a lot of talent on this team, and their defense has looked great. I mean, the Bellarmine coach talked about it before the game, Coach Whitley. He mentioned that, Notre Dame has basically 3 number 1 guys on their defense, and he was trying to strategize, work around trying to figure out how to get his guys in a better position to score against this stout Notre Dame defense. And I think you're going to find that problem with a lot of ACC teams. So I think there's hope for this men's lacrosse team, obviously a top 10 team. So it'll be interesting to see how things go moving forward. Moving on to women's lacrosse, they've been plagued by a lot of COVID issues. We're supposed to play Virginia Tech on Saturday. That got canceled, played Robert Morris instead on short notice. Chloe, what stood out to you about this team thus far?
Well, this team, I'm very excited to watch this team this season. They're ranked number 4 right now, and last year they were ranked number 2 all throughout the season. And I think that they're playing this week and kind of showed it. They beat Robert Morris 16-2. Huge team win, a lot of scoring, a lot of subbing, a lot of great camaraderie, and that's saying a lot for this offensive powerhouse. We have amazing players, All-Americans all throughout the field. On attack, we have Madison Ahern, a sophomore, and she won NCAA Freshman of the Year last year, and she's not stopping. She has goals on top of goals on top of goals, and I really think we have these offensive weapons to make it far.
Mm-hmm. No, I agreed. We have an offensive powerhouse here. I wanted to shout out Maddie Howe and Sam Lynch, 4 goals apiece then against Robert Morris. They were outstanding in that game, and I'd be interested to see if they can keep riding this hot streak. We're definitely going to need it against Syracuse, but I've been blown away. Again, I'm not a big lacrosse guy, but watching that game, I was impressed with how well they were moving the ball and how well they were capitalizing on those offensive opportunities to put up so many points then. And I think that they've obviously been off for a while, but there was no rust there. This is an experienced team, I think, ready to make a run this year. and I'm excited for what the future holds. It's made me a women's lacrosse fan.
Yeah, and you guys talked a lot about the offense, but I mean, shout out Bridget Dean in net. She's 75% save percentage, has only allowed 6 goals through 2 games thus far. I think she's looked really impressive as well. And I also think, kind of mentioning the fact that they've been so impacted by COVID early in the season, it gets a team ready for adversity. The fact that they played Robert Morris on such short notice, like that Virginia Tech game got canceled in the 9th inning last week. So the fact that they were able to put that together, I thought that was really impressive. I mean, Chloe, can you speak at all to just like the adaptability of this team?
Yeah, so they played Robert Morris. They played Vandy a few weeks ago, and then Notre Dame unfortunately got struck with Corona, so they had to cancel a few games. And then they were going to come back and play Virginia Tech. And then about, I think, 3 days before they were ready to play Virginia Tech, that game got canceled because of COVID protocols on Virginia Tech's side. And I think less than 48 hours before Saturday, they found out they were playing Robert Morris. So you could just see the adaptability of this team. They're ready to go at it, they're ready to play, and they're ready to score goals no matter who it's against, no matter when it is. And I think that's going to really work for them, especially during this season, which might be weird due to COVID.
Mm-hmm. I think it definitely speaks to their mental fortitude and their toughness. Again, we're talking about they got a very difficult schedule coming up, primarily number 2 Syracuse, number 1 North Carolina, Duke, some really tough opponents. And I think that if they get down early, they've proven that they have what it takes to bounce back. They won't be fazed by any sort of early lead another team gets. And that's why what really stands out to me is those intangibles that this team possesses that will lead them to, I think, a lot of success this year.
Yeah, a lot to be excited about in both men's and women's lacrosse. But moving from the lacrosse field to the soccer field, men's soccer lost 1-0 to a Virginia team that they beat in overtime earlier this season. John, you had the heartbreaking reaction right there. I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, so I've actually become quite a big Notre Dame men's soccer fan. I'm in Stanford Hall. The guy right across from me, Matt McLaughlin's a freshman on the team this year, so I've been following their exploits closely. He's actually been traveling with the team starting this spring and got to play in the game, made his impact already. But no, Virginia's been thorn in our side for a while now these past couple of years. A lot of tight contests with the team, and really this game was no different. Virginia controlled possession throughout. They were very dominant with the ball and really didn't make any mistakes. Our offense, we're not necessarily the powerhouses putting up a ton of points out on that end, and a lot of our offense is predicated around pressing high up the field to capitalize on a counterattack and is remaining really aggressive on defense to use those opportunities to turn them into offense. But Virginia, playing as conservative as they were, I think they knew this strategy that we had, and they were able to avoid any unnecessary turnovers. Notre Dame didn't have a shot on goal all game. I think a lot of that is testament to Virginia carefully handling the ball and minimizing mistakes that our team can take advantage of.
Yeah, to go off of that, I was going to say that one big thing I think men's soccer needs to focus on is getting the ball up the field and getting as many shots as they can. A lot of their games are these very low-scoring games, some 1-0, some 2-1s, very low scoring. In order to make these big wins, they need to score more. It's as simple as that. I think their defense has done amazing because they've also – the low-scoring games for the defense is good because they let less goals in. So I think really what we need to do is get the ball up more, get it to Jacqueline, a great forward, get it in up there and let them score some goals.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chloe, especially because I think, especially early on this season, Notre Dame's, their goal scoring was generated entirely off set pieces. So it's kind of just figuring out, and we talk about Jacqueline having such a talented player on your roster. It kind of creates a little bit of a dependency, which can sometimes turn into a flaw. Lynn was injured earlier this season, and they definitely struggled a lot more when he was out, obviously. So I think that creates an interesting scenario. But then coming up this weekend, they're playing Duke on Friday. John, let me get your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to set the tone for the rest of the season, honestly. I think that's a game that we are more than capable of winning and should win. I thought, the game against Butler in February was easy, good way to get ourselves back in it. Virginia's obviously a tough team, and, it could have gone either way, and really lost very unluckily with the way that it came in. Sudden death overtime, the cross that just bounced in the net at the end. But I think this team is very, very talented. I think we have the potential to go on a run finish top 3 in the North region this year. That's my hot take for now. And I think a lot of that's just testament to our young core. I know we spoke a bit earlier about having the prior experience in the fall and extra training time during the winter, what impact that would have on the team. And I think because of our youth, having that fall experience is going to lead to a lot of improvement. With strong freshman class is going to allow us to really come out strong this spring.
Those are some really good thoughts. Yeah, a lot of good stuff talking about here today. We talked a lot of fun stuff. For John Bailey and Chloe Stafford, I'm Chris Frick. Thanks for tuning in to Shamrock Sports.